And welcome back to our weekly interview for Around the Bases with Bubba and Mo. This week, talking some Baltimore Orioles baseball. And in order to do so, joined by Eroc. You can find him on Twitter at Barstool RDT. Eroc, how we doing, man?
Good. What's going on, fellas?
Not much. Thanks for joining us to talk about some Orioles baseball. I'll be very, very upfront with you on this. The Orioles are a team that we've had some issues understanding their philosophy of late, so I'm really looking forward to talking.
Yeah, you're not the only one.
Yeah, like even last year, they started out hot, and then we're like, where did this team come from? And then they finished kind of where we thought they would, and it's starting out pretty rough this year. And let's just get right at it. Machado's back for his last season. Zach Britton, they could have traded him, and obviously he's hurt now and will be back mid to 2/3 through the season. How big of a mistake do you think it was that they did not trade Machado and Britton last year at the deadline?
Manny, I didn't think that they were going to trade Manny at all last year, especially not at the deadline. There was just no buzz around him. There was no real talk about, moving him. A lot of the talk was on moving Britton and getting him, out of there because for whatever reason, it wasn't about Machado then. I think they thought that they could compete this year, with the Red Sox and the Yankees in the division, if not, for the division for the wild card spot. And they thought they had a good enough bullpen to be able to ship out Britton and still be in a good position. With Machado, like I said, I think, behind the scenes, maybe they talked about it, but it seemed like a lot of the focus was moving on Britton. And I think it was a big mistake not trading him, not because of the injury that he suffered in December with the torn Achilles, because that's a fluke thing. He was working out, that could have happened when he was getting Chipotle, tomorrow or something like that. But I talked to a guy who's pretty close to some people in the organization, who's never steered me wrong. And he said they were minutes away from a deadline deal. He was telling me, the Britton is going to Houston. It was going to be Bregman. It was going to be, a few other guys. But one of them, something shoddy with the physicals came back, and knowing the Orioles, they scrapped that. So, and that's when it ended up, they went out and they ended up getting Liriano, who was that left-handed guy in the bullpen for their playoff run. But yeah, I love Zach Britton. I've loved him, since he rebounded from being a garbage starter here. I think he's been great. I think he's meant a lot to the team, but I think that everyone thought that we were going to kind of move on from him at the deadline last year. And especially just with how this year is gone and they've just played so bad. And, the bullpen stinks without him. It stunk, I don't know. I think last year if they could have got a decent haul for him last year when he wasn't even having that good of a year, I think he was on the DL twice. He just didn't even look like the same guy he did when he was setting the records 2 years ago. So yeah, I think it was a pretty big mistake not trading him. But again, I was able to sleep at night, knowing that he was still on the team. But if I had my druthers, I probably would have made that trade with Houston.
Yeah, especially with Bregman. I don't think many people report on that. But speaking of rebounding from being a garbage starter, Dylan Bundy, not Zach Britton garbage, but not what we thought he was going to be. And he's finally, we all knew what Manny Machado was going to be this year. It being a contract year and good second half last year. Is Dylan Bundy, is this him? Is this the real deal? Or is he going to regress back to what he was last year or in between? What do you think?
I think he's a real deal. I think he's the guy that they drafted, way back when, in 2010, 2011, when they picked him to be, he was throwing 100 out of high school. He was just one of these guys who had tree trunks for legs. He got big and strong by doing these farm workouts. He was like a Paul Bunyan. And the injuries, kind of weighed him down. I remember several times, tweeting or blogging, I'll pack this guy's bags for him because he's never going to be anything. It seemed like it was just up. Here's another Orioles starter who, shoulder injury, elbow injury, Tommy John, he's getting this, he's rehabbing. And, it was like he was like an urban myth. I never thought we'd see him up here. And then, we saw him come up that year and he was out of the bullpen and he was pretty good then, and we saw flashes. And then last year, I was ecstatic with how he was. I know they kind of slowed him down and, at the end of the year, he kind of fell off. And I think that's just fatigue for him. People forget he made his MLB debut in 2012. believe, no, 2014, I think. I'm sorry. But and then he got hurt again. So it's like this guy could have been here in 2015, 2014. Who knows what they could have done? But I mean, I've loved everything I've seen out of him. He's not, and he's not the 100-mile-an-hour guy that he was coming out of high school, but he doesn't need to be. His off speed stuff is a lot better than it was obviously coming out of high school. In high school he could blow everyone away with 100 and no one could touch him, but it's a little different up here. But I think I saw him. I don't think I saw him pitch at all last year live, at least like in the stadium. But I made it a point to go to the game. They had a game like 2 or 3 Mondays ago against the Blue Jays on a Monday night where like 7,500 people went, and it was the lowest attended game in Camden Yards history, except for the game after the riot when no one was there. But it was 35 degrees, sleeting and raining, and I was like, no, I want to go out and see Bundy. And I think he went 7 2/3 and struck out like 10. And I was like, this guy's a stud. Like these, we tossed around the word ace. I guess we kind of thought we had an Orioles ace a few years ago in Chris Tillman in 2016 when he was very good that first half. And he's been injured ever since. But I think, he's easily the Orioles' best pitcher, I think, since Eroc Bedard back in like 2007, who ended up, getting traded for Jones and Tillman and all them. But yeah, I think he's the real deal. I think he's, going to be a force to reckon with over the next few years in the AL East. So.
No, I like it. I think he is definitely the real deal. The pitch mix and everything he's been doing is phenomenal. The adjustments he's made since the injury and as he's developed the last couple of years is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another starting pitcher, not named Kevin Gausman, because that's just a mystery that continues to be a mystery. Let's talk Alex Cobb. This was one of those when the signing took place. I was like, okay, cool, they landed him. Then we saw the details of 4 years, around almost $60 million. After we saw Lance Lynn's deal and some other deals, you kind of started to wonder, what is it the Orioles saw here? I'm still confused, and I know I'm not just saying that based on the early start he could develop. Do you think this is still a good signing, and it's just it's his spring training and things are going to get better, or is there massive concern here?
I don't think there's massive concern. I mean, number one, because they're already 13 games out. It's not like they're what if this guy chokes away in September? It's like they're already 13 games out. A lot of people are already kind of mailing this in. So now it's kind of just like, now I'd just rather him go out there and just don't get hurt and, stay healthy. But, I mean, his ERA is over 13. His whip's almost 3. Like I think he's given up 10 hits in each one of his starts. Like it's ridiculous. And I do get that people say, well, yeah, he signed late. I think he signed like, was it February 24th or it was something like that where he signed pretty late. The season started about a month after that. Or maybe it wasn't. I think it was like sooner than that he signed. But I mean, the 4-year deal really surprised me, and that kind of when they had the 4-year deal, that's when I kind of figured out that Dan Duquette's just kind of taking a back seat. I don't know how much people outside of Baltimore realize this.
We talked about it quite a bit last week.
Yeah, Dan Duquette is
on The Athletic.
Yeah, yeah. So I did read that. And it talks about him being quote unquote the general manager. He's not the general manager. He's not any of that really much anymore. He's kind of a guy that sits there and he watches the game. He he gets a free ticket, and then at the end of the day goes home. Brady Anderson, I mean, and like I said, it may be news to everyone outside Baltimore, but we've known this for years. He's Brady Anderson's been a big guy like that. Bringing in some players, but Duquette said, and he said it this offseason, we don't give 4-year deals to starters. He's, it won't happen. We're not going to do it. And then 3 weeks later, they turn around and give Alex Cobb a 4-year deal. To me, that's kind of like, hey, Dan can say whatever he wants, but at the end of the day, he's this lame duck GM, and it's pretty obvious that his word is not echoing in the warehouse. He can say whatever he wants, but Brady Anderson behind the scenes is gonna do whatever he wants, and he did. So yeah, the 4-year deal definitely surprised me. Like I said, especially, after they said that they weren't going to do it. That being said, I've been told, Cobb is the new Ubaldo. He's, this contract's going to stink for 4 years. No. I don't think that's the case at all. Ubaldo had, a good second half in Cleveland. He had a good year, the 1 year in Colorado, which no one else has ever been able to do, which is just insanely weird, Twilight Zone type stuff. And I think Cobb will turn it around. And people do say, well, it's a spring training. He signed late. And that's what I kind of have a problem with. If it's still his spring training, he still needs to be down in Florida. He needs to be getting his mechanic, doing all that stuff. I didn't get them rushing him. And whatever scout or whoever said, I think he's ready. I think he looks good. Like I just didn't understand that at all. I think you give him as much time as he needs because again, he's out there with a 13 ERA. Like the guy probably has zero confidence. I know he's a veteran and he's been through Tommy John, so he's been knocked down and he's gotten back up again. But it's just like, why even subject the guy to this? I think his first start it may have been the Red Sox start when he got it was a freezing cold game and I think he got his shit rocked. So it's like, why not just delay him?
He did.
Yeah. So it's like, why on earth? It's like throwing a rookie out there in his first career start in Fenway when it's 25 degrees. Like, what do you do? Just make him have one more start in extended spring training and let him, again, get his confidence going against someone down there. And then you bring him up. So I didn't understand that. I'm not really worried. And like I said, I'm not really worried because I know what he's done before. I've seen him in the AL East. And again, they're 13 games out. So it's not like I'm worried about this guy choking, in a do or die game at the end of September, with the wild card on the line. It's this year is pretty much already a lost year for the Orioles. So I like Cobb, he's up here now, I guess you let him take his beatings. And like you said, he's a veteran. He's been there before. He's played on some garbage Tampa team. So, you let him figure it out. He's not too, this losing stuff isn't new to him, I guess. So now you just let him, you hope that he's healthy and you hope that, he can figure it out. And he had some good quotes the other day that sounded very Ubaldo-like where, I know I'm bad and I want to help the team win and stuff like that, which that pissed everyone off when Ubaldo said that because, the beat writers would say, oh, Ubaldo would get his shit rocked 13-0 or something like that. And he'd be the first one at the ballpark running stairs the next day. And the beat reporters would take a picture of him and go, look at this, Ubaldo's running stairs. And people are like, I don't care if he's running stairs. He can't throw the ball over the plate, It doesn't matter. So, we're not there yet with Cobb. I'm not worried at all. Like I mentioned a bunch of times, he's a veteran. We know what he brings. I think he'll be fine.
The scout probably said that he can't be any worse than Mike Wright, but apparently
I
know that apparently that's the case. But let's get to the bullpen. Through April, 19th in bullpen ERA. Obviously, Zach Britton will come back, and that will help. I mean, he hasn't had not an arm issue; it's his Achilles, so he should be pretty close to coming back. Right when he starts. But the peripherals look like they're going to be better than their pitching, and that's been your stable for the last few years. So, do you think that they'll be okay?
I think they will be. The bullpen does worry me because going into the season, I said, they've had this great bullpen since 2012, 2013. I fully expect that to continue. I thought Darren O'Day has been, he's been that guy since 2012. He's the leader in the clubhouse. He's, the big ball swinging. He's loaded the bases countless times and gotten out of it. And he hasn't been his normal self this year. I think he's given up like 3 home runs in his 11 appearances, but they always seem to be late inning home runs. Brad Brock's the guy who it's just frustrating. You could tell it's a head thing. I mean, he came in opening day and people have talked about him as a closer for a while. He's another guy who they talked about trading. I know it seems like he's been linked to the Mets every year for the last 2 or 3 years. And so they've been, his name has been mentioned as a closer and he comes in and he just shits the bed. He gave up a lead on opening day. He's given it up a few times since. And they're doing this closer by committee type thing, which again, isn't going to get anyone's confidence up too high and stuff like that. And Buck's normally pretty good about managing his bullpen. But again, Brock's a weird player because I know he gave up a run, I think last week, but before that, his ERA was like 2.3. Not bad. I'll take that any day. But his whip was like high one. It was like 1.8 or something like that. So it's like, I mean, yeah, I'm sure. I don't know if you guys remember the game against the Yankees where he loads the bases in extra innings with no outs, and that's when he ended up getting out of it with that weird double play and striking out Stanton. But again, so it's people are getting on. They're hitting him. He's there. It's one of those innings where it's like he'll come in and he'll walk a guy on 5 pitches, and then he'll walk the next guy on 4, and it's just like, so this guy's confidence is just shot. So I mean, he can't be much worse. But I thought there was going to be an all-star berth for Michael Givens this year, and he's had a rough year. He was my dark horse as, you know, this guy's going to be a stud. He's going to be a great, you know, great pitcher this year. They've talked about him as a closer too. And he's had a rough year. He's kind of rebounded recently, but he wasn't throwing strikes for the first 2 weeks, so it was tough with that, and especially with Britton being out, because, you know, the last 3 years, Britton was that guy who, I mean, you know, the game was over. He was like Craig Kimbrell. He was like Chapman when he came in. You know, this game's over. We'll get him tomorrow type guy, because he was just that dominant. And I guess the guy who's really saved the bullpen, it's been Rocky Blyer. Not Rocky Blyer. I'm sorry, Richard Blyer. Rocky Blyer is the old football player. But Blyer's been great. I mean, he's so weird. He's a tall, lanky lefty. And like he doesn't throw very fast. He doesn't strike anyone out. And his stuff, he doesn't have great stuff. He just gets outs. Like he's a .54 whip, or I'm sorry, ERA, a whip under 1. It's just I can't explain it. I don't get it. But he's been great. He's been one of their best pickups, you know, in the last few years. So he's kind of saved this bullpen. You know, without him, that bullpen ERA of, you know, 19th in the league would have been a lot, you know, lower. But yeah, I think, and, you know, they started the season with the 2 Rule 5 guys in the bullpen, which drove just everyone insane. And they had, you know, Nestor Cortez Jr., who gave up, I think, 2 grand slams and like 26 at bats or something like that, which is, of course, is 2 more than Jim Palmer has ever given up in his career. And it's just, you know, that was just a disgusting experiment to even try with a team like this, who was already on the fence, and you just stick 2 guys in there that have never pitched above A ball. So, you know, I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. Is you know, those 2 guys kind of weighing down the bullpen and not being able to option them. But I think they'll be okay. And again, Britton said all along, and I'll give him credit, you know, right when it happened, he said, I'm going to come back before the expected timetable. I'm going to rehab my ass off, and I'm going to do whatever I can to get out there. And it seems like that's what he has done. A lot of the beat reporters last week were, you know, tweeting out videos and pictures of him doing his, you know, PFPs and hopping off the mound and planting on that foot and throwing. So I'm excited for him to come back again. I think he's just trade bait. You know, there's always a team that can use a closer, you know, someone to revamp that, or, you know, add another arm to that bullpen and try and get them into the playoffs. So I'm sure that, you know, they'll look to move him if they can. And I guess we go from there. But overall, I mean, I got to think the bullpen can be better. It can't be much worse than it has been, you know, this season.
True. You already kind of hinted at it. We talked about it last week, the ownership, open management type situations going on. You got the kids having more of an impact there. You mentioned Brady Anderson, who, before I read that article at The Athletic, kind of like, where the heck Brady Anderson come back from the grave? But there's a lot of interesting things going on there. They're going to try to rebuild the farm system again. And, you know, the kids' night they're doing for free. I like that a lot. There's ways they're trying to rejuvenate the team and get things going. Can you give us a little behind the scenes on what actually is going on in the front office there with the Orioles?
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, it's no secret that, you know, Peter Angelos's kids, Lou and John, have been running the team for a few years. Peter's getting up there in age, and he's not the most liked guy in Baltimore because of just, you know, the 14 straight losing seasons and just, you know, the penny pinching Peter, you know, the guy doesn't want to spend and this and that. But it's tough for Peter right now. I think he's pretty sick. So again, you know, even with his kids, I'm not sure how much they're invested in the ball club. Just with their dad being sick and getting up there in age and not looking, you know, very good for the future. But you know, Peter was never a guy. He wasn't George Steinbrenner, where he's sitting, you know, in the front row of his box. He liked to keep, and his kids are kind of the same way. They like to keep a low profile. They're the owners, you know, they're not the GMs. They kind of stay out of it, which I get that to a degree, you know. In sports, you see owners like Robert Kraft, you know, he's kind of out in public, and then you got guys like, you know, Daniel Snyder, who here in DC thinks he knows what he's doing, and, you know, he's a genius and has zero clue what he's doing. So I'm okay with them kind of staying back. But yeah, I mean, you know, the kids' night, you know, kids under 9, I think, are free if you buy an adult ticket. That stuff like that's great. It's just to get kids out to the ballpark, just to get attendance up any way you can. Like I mentioned, you know, the 7,500 person game a few weeks ago, and I get it. The weather's been shit. You can't do anything about that. But I mean, even with the weather, you know, being nice a few years ago, they're drawing I don't know, 20, 25,000 for a team with arguably, you know, if Manny Machado stays on this team, he's probably the greatest Oriole of all time. And, you know, people don't want to come out and see him. And I've talked to people on the team, around the team, who say, you know, we pick up on the attendance. We know, you know, I know, you know, some infielders who talk about, man, I feel like I'm in the minors again because there's a crowd of 11,000, you know, because it's a bobblehead night and they get their bobblehead and they leave. So stuff like that. And I get it. You know, the riots a few years ago were terrible. I don't live in Baltimore. I live close enough to Baltimore where you can see the helicopters, things like that. So it sucked because you know, it was a negative light and on the team and the city, and you had to find a way to get people back into the, you know, ownership had to do something to try and get people back into the stadium. So the kids thing under 9 is neat. I like it. But yeah, I guess we can go back to Brady Anderson. He's been around the team for a while now, a few years, and he's tight with Buck, and he's also an Angelos guy. Angelos was, you know, always like Brady when he was here, when he played. So, you know, it started out as he was like a player personnel type guy, and he was doing some stuff like that, and it's really transitioned into him negotiating contracts. I think he was big on the Darren O'Day and Trumbo and Tillman and guys like that, bringing them back. And Brady, he did his own contract when he was here in Baltimore. He didn't have an agent. So he, you know, it seems like even when he was a player, he kind of knew that I guess he wanted to go in this direction and be kind of this front office guy, which is kind of neat. You know, you don't really hear anything like that anymore. So that's kind of cool. But I mean, I've seen Brady around the ballpark and I'm just like in awe when I see him. His sideburns are still there. The guy looks like he can, you know, still hit, you know, 30 bombs, not 50, because a little questionable.
I was gonna say, yeah.
But
yeah,
yeah, 50,
I wasn't going to bring that up. I was just curious.
Yeah, the 50 came out of nowhere, but we won't talk about that.
During a certain era, it was just crazy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, everyone was doing it. But no, I mean, he's just a workout freak. I know. I talk with Trey Mancini every now and then, and I talk to him. Back before I guess it was before last year, I texted him, you know, hey, how's your off season going? And he goes, oh, I'm staying at Brady Anderson's house with Zach Britton and a few other guys. And he was telling us about, apparently he lived, you know, somewhere out in California, and he has this just hill in the back that's just like, you know, almost 90 degrees. It's an insane hill. And he goes, you know, at the morning, Brady goes, we're not done running till everyone throws up. So, you know, he has these guys in good shape. So, you know, he's good with the players. They obviously like him. And man, you know, Angelos likes him. And I guess it's more importantly, Angelos' sons like him, because going forward, like I said, that's who's going to be running the team and who's pretty much already running the team now. So and with Dan Duquette's contract coming up after this year, I mean, I've heard rumors that, yeah, I mean, you know, he tried to leave in 2015. He wanted to leave. And that's where Angelos, yeah, he wanted to go. And it was, you know, it was weird because it was during the season, things like that. So Angelos being a lawyer, and that's how he ended up buying the team. He was, you know, a Baltimore lawyer. He stuck to his lawyer ways and said, no, you know, you signed this contract. And that's all the Baltimore fans kind of like that, because they, you know, didn't really want Duquette to go, but they wanted Angelos to kind of, you know, stick it to him. So that's what happened. So it'll be interesting, this whole dynamic in the offseason, just to see with Angelos' health and his sons. And, you know, Buck's obviously up for you know, his contract's up too. Duquette is up. So there are a lot of rumors that Brady will step into Dan's role. You know, they're even saying Buck may be he may split the upper management role with Brady and still manage. So it'll definitely be something to keep an eye on. It'll it's something that's pretty interesting, and, you know, something to look forward to going into the offseason.
Well, being a Boston guy, I was even, just to comment on that, I was even shocked that Duquette was even back in the game, because he was like in hiding after he left the Red Sox. He was like producing,
out of baseball.
He was like producing plays on Broadway or something like that, something crazy like that. So the fact that he even got back in is kind of crazy to me. But look, a couple more here. Let's get to the farm system. You know, obviously it's not the best farm system in baseball. It's probably in the bottom 10 or so. You know, you've got Austin Hayes, you got Mountcastle, you got Harvey, you got Cisco. And then last year's first-round pick, DL Hall, you know, he started pretty good pitcher, you know, obviously young kid, control issues to start. But is there anyone else that we should watch out for in the next couple years that could surprise people that isn't on anyone's radar?
I think if you ask anyone in Baltimore, I don't think you said his name, Cedric Mullins.
Yep.
Nice. Did you mention?
No,
him?
I didn't say it.
Okay,
No,
God, yeah. He's a guy to keep an eye on. He's listed at 6 foot, which is very generous. He's one of these smaller outfielders. I think he's playing center now, but I don't think he'll stick in center. He'll probably be a corner outfielder position, but he's one of these guys who he was a mid-teens draft pick, I think, a few years ago, and he kind of just burst on the scene last year in spring training. He ended up taking Craig Kimbrell like deep to like dead center in a spring training game. He's just a stolen base machine. He's triple. He's a power alley guy. Really, really intriguing guy. Really intriguing prospect. He spent a lot of time in the major league camp this spring training, and the name's been floated around there. So that's definitely a guy who at least we're all excited about. You compare him with Mancini in the outfield, who's made a great transition. He was a first baseman up until 3 weeks left in spring training last year. Austin Hayes too, like you said. We saw a little glimpse of him last year. Yeah. He's going to be. I think he's going to be a good player. Again, DL Hall. He's still in his first few weeks of, his first season pitching and pro. So he's another guy that I'm excited for. Hunter Harvey is just, again, a guy who struggled with injuries, shoulder injuries, elbow, blah blah blah. It's Dylan Bundy part 2 as I'm thinking right now. So and he got called up a few weeks ago as kind of just in a body to have in the bullpen. And everyone was thinking, this is going to be it. But I don't think we'll see him. We'll probably see him September when expanded rosters and see if he does get a start. I don't really want to see him. I don't think he's thrown more than 40 innings since he came up here. So no reason to rush him, but he's definitely something to be excited for. DJ Stewart, their first round pick from a few years ago, who's actually best friends with the Ravens first round pick, Hayden Hurst, the tight end they got this year. Nice. So I don't know where I forget where that connection came from, but they were both talking about how we're going to own Baltimore in a few years and blah blah blah. So he's a guy. I think he was a first baseman at Florida State. I think he'd probably be like a corner outfielder up here, but he's a bigger guy, had a big crouch stance, and they've kind of straightened him out. And because I think people took a look at his stance and said, "Oh, that guy's going to get eaten alive in the majors." So they've straightened him out. He had a good year last year. He's had a pretty good year this year. And a guy who can get healthy was their first round pick from a few years ago, Cody Sedlock from Illinois, who he's meeting with. It's not Dr. James Andrews. I think it's Dr. James Harvey. So that was Mr. Porter around Baltimore, as people saw, he's meeting with Dr. James and everyone assumed it was Andrews, but I think it's James Harvey, who I think he had a PRP injection in his shoulder, and he had a bad year last year because he was injured. So same thing again. It's rinse and repeat with these Orioles pitchers. Oh, shoulder injury, elbow injury. Oh, forearm tightness, Tommy John. It's we've seen that a bunch of times. They've got some other guys. Alex Wells, who had an insane strikeout to walk. I think he walked 3 people all of last year. Just like video game numbers when I play the show. He just doesn't walk anyone. And there's another guy. I think his last name it's Lothar or something like that. He had again. His strikeout to walk.
Zach Lothar.
Yeah, Zach Lothar. I think he had some insane game this year where I think he had 16 Ks and in 5. It was something stupid where he should not have had that amount of strikeouts. But he again is very low walk. High strikeout guy. So it's perceived that the Orioles farm system. It's not it's not the best. It's not one of the upper tier, but I don't think it's as bad as I guess analysts and people like that. I mean, they obviously there's a reason they're an analyst or an expert. But I'm surprised they've put out some good players recently. And again, you mentioned Mountcastle, who can hit the hell out of the ball. It's just his problem is his defense. And I think they said if his glove was average, he'd be up here. He probably would have been up here to start the year. But he broken, or he had a hairline fracture, and he was out for a little bit of time. He's still out now, but he's a guy to look at. There's a few other guys like you mentioned that we're excited for. So it's not one of the top ones, but it's not as barren as it was a few years ago. And there's definitely some of the trade chips they have. This prospect their farm system could be growing soon. So I guess we got to see how that develops.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, it's decent now. It's got the ability to be very, very nice here pretty soon. The rough start to the year, you've already pretty much hinted, this season's a lost season. We're just going to move on and keep going, which most people believe. And the fact you're accepting that already is something I tell people as a Giants fan last season and whatnot. You need to just accept the down seasons because it happens. What do you think the Orioles do? Obviously, they should be sellers. Machado, Dodgers are hurting for someone now, but that's going to be an interesting deal. I saw you throw out an interesting trade idea to LA for Matt Kemp and whatnot. What do you think they do? You Britton, Machado, other pieces of the puzzle before the season's over?
I mean, I see. Part of me thinks Machado gets traded, but then I just don't. Then there's another part of me who's like the Orioles aren't going to trade him just because everyone else says they need to trade him. Like this is what we saw also with Britton last year. They didn't trade him because it was the medicals for him, for the other players, and then they also didn't just trade him because they wanted to get rid of him. They didn't think the package they were getting back was equal compensation for him. And again, they're not going to trade Machado for 2 prospects, 3 prospects. They're going to want the entire house. They're going to want everything. And no one's going to give that up for a rental, for a guy who is, he's 6 months away from free agency. That's what every player dies for. And especially for a guy who can make $250 to $300 million. So part of me thinks, I would have been more accepting of it if they would have traded him at the winter meetings, like everyone thought they were. I mean, I was, I kind of went through my stages of grief where I was like, oh, they're not going to trade him. There's no way. And then I was like, wait, why are they going to trade him? And then, depressed and upset. And I equated it to, high school, the summer after high school season, or your high school senior year, where at the beginning of the summer, you and your girlfriend go, all right, well, we're just going to break up at the end of the summer when we go to college. And you're like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I'll figure it out then, let's have fun this summer though. And then, so, I'm waiting, and then, and then it just never comes. And you're like, oh, wait. So what do we do? What are we doing here? Like, are we I had it all mapped out. I was just mentally prepared. I had my blogs ready. I had pictures and gifs and things ready to go when they traded Manny.
Oh, Jesus.
So it was, I thought they were going to trade him then. That was probably the best time because, again, a team would have had a full year of him. Maybe they would have been able to convince him to sign an extension. But again, now I don't see him signing an extension. And yeah, I mean, obviously the second Corey Seager, was announced yesterday. Everyone and their mother tweeted out, Machado to the Dodgers. It just makes sense. And I'm watching MLB Network, and Ken Rosenthal is like, well, it doesn't really make sense. Sorry, excuse me, because he says, that's never been the Dodgers. That's never been their MO. That's not what they do. They don't unload, prospects for, rentals. And he was like, well, I don't know why they would switch that now because, again, why trade your top 3 or 4 guys for a guy who is probably not going to stay. And again, the Dodgers are also struggling. You know that as a Giants fan, I'm sure.
Yep.
He does. Trust me. He does.
I'm not hiding my smiles from that.
Exactly. Yeah. So if they're what are they? I think I saw they're 8 games out or something like that.
Yeah, they're struggling.
Yeah. So there's no guarantee Manny puts them over the top. So, should they trade him? Yes, absolutely. They should have traded him probably 2 years ago because. Again, this is why Duquette probably won't be coming back because Duquette said in the offseason, we haven't offered Manny a contract. I'm sorry, they haven't talked to him about a contract in 3 years. Not even offered him a contract, talked to him about a contract. So, it's like 3 years ago. That's when he's coming off his second major knee surgery. If anything, that's when you do it because you go, hey, we'll give you 5 for $100 million. You'll make $20 million a year. If you come back, in like we think you will, great, you'll still hit free agency in your prime. If not, and your needs give out, hey, you got $100 million guaranteed coming to you. And that's what they should have done because, and even people now, if the Orioles tomorrow said, hey, we offered Manny Machado 200 or 10 years for $250 million, and he says no, then Dan Duquette and the Orioles can go, hey, we tried. We're not the bad guys in this anymore. Because again, I will equate it back. If you're the ugliest guy in high school, you should still probably ask the hottest girl in school, hey, you want to go to the prom? She says no. You're like, hey, screw her. I'm the one. I asked her. I tried. What do you want me to do? So just the fact that the Orioles haven't even attempted to, like, hey, you know, lowball him, offer him $100 million for 10 years, and have him say, you know, go screw yourself, and you'll go, okay, well, we tried. So yeah, yes, they should have traded him again, probably, you know, 2 years ago, a year ago at this point, because if they knew they weren't going to be able to re-sign him, then you know, that's when you have to act. But that's why the Orioles are the Orioles, and that's why, you know, we're looking at another, I don't want to say 14 years of losing, but it seems like it. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's probably a good choice to field phone calls on Britton and Brad Brock, and, you know, even Adam Jones. I know people in Baltimore kind of, you know, I mean, he's the heart and soul of this team. He's Captain America. He's loved by everyone down here, but it's, you know, he's said too, I want to win, and I want to be in a place that wants to win, and it doesn't look like
Jones
Baltimore
to DC. Jones to DC.
Oh, I would hate that.
Did they ever trade with them?
I don't know. I mean, there was the thing with Arrieta a few years ago where when Arrieta was a bum, and DC wanted him, and Angelo said no, and that's what I'll give Angelo's props for that. You know, he said no, I'm not. We're not letting him go there. So I don't know. I mean, I've heard obviously Adam wants to go back to the West Coast and be with his family. He's from San Diego, so I've heard that's a place Manny wants to go too. I've heard that it's if he has his choice, it's Miami or it's San Diego. So
Miami, ooh.
Yeah. So
Cap year, though. Cap year.
Oh, always Cap year. Always.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Should they trade them? Yes, absolutely they should. Should probably punt on the air, but will they? Probably not, because just yesterday Dan Duquette said, "Oh, well, it's still too early to, you know, to make any decision."
Unreal.
It's like, dude, it's not even May and we're 13 games out. Like, just open your eyes. Dan Duquette reminds me of Peter from Office Space after he gets hypnotized, where he kind of just shows up every day and is like, yeah. And like, if you ever listen to anything he says, he always sounds like he just rolled out of bed.
Oh, all the time.
Oh my God. Also, fun fact, Dan Duquette bought Jared Carabas his first beer on his 21st birthday, his first legal beer.
That's outstanding.
Yep. Jared said, you know, he walked into his bar or something like that, and Dan was there, and he said, "Hi, Dan, you know, I'm Jared. I do the Red Sox MySpace or whatever." And Dan said something, oh yeah, like, I know who you are, you know. And he said, "Oh, it's my birthday, you know, we're celebrating here." And Dan said, "Let me buy you your first drink." So that's a nice icebreaker if you guys get Jared on.
Yeah, for sure.
We've been talking to him a few times, so that's funny right there.
Yeah.
Well, like we said, it is the Caps year, and we appreciate you joining us tonight, Eric. It's going to be an up and down roller coaster, but we'll definitely be following your blogs over there at Barstool and everything else you got coming out. So, man, thanks for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Check him out on Twitter at Barstool RDT. But yeah, thanks for joining us, man.
Absolutely. Take it easy, guys.
Thanks.
See ya.